Hey YouTube family, welcome to the 4th episode of 2A in LA. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out the first 3 videos, please go back and do so. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. And so with that said, let's get it rolling with the top 10 things that liberals need to know about guns from a liberal. All right, number 1, an AR-15 is not an assault rifle. First of all, the AR in AR-15 stands for Armalite 15, which is the name of the patent, and not assault rifle. Secondly, it's a semi-automatic weapon, which essentially means that for every one pull of the trigger, one bullet comes out the other end. That is the same as a handgun. That is the same as a revolver. That is the same as a shotgun. That is the same as your uncle's old beat up wooden rifle that's out in the garage somewhere. Fully automatic weapons are what our military uses. That means that when something is fully automatic, for one trigger pull, multiple rounds are dispersed. Okay, most of those guns are already banned and illegal for citizens to own. So the AR-15 was designed to be a civilian weapon, so therefore it was made for civilian use, so we can stop all this nonsense about it being a weapon of war and all this other stuff. Okay. Here's the next myth: handguns are not easier to shoot than an AR-15. So let's dispel this rumor right away. I think people think in general that handguns are easier to shoot because they're smaller, and because they're smaller they should be easier to control and there should be less recoil. That is simply, while intuitively that may sound right, it is simply the opposite. Typically, recoil, meaning the amount the gun kicks, is the result of, all things being equal, the length of the barrel. Shorter barrel, more recoil, longer barrel, easier recoil. So handguns have more recoil than rifles, okay? All things being equal. Secondly, let's think about controlling the gun. When you have a handgun, there's only 2 points of contact, your right hand and your left hand, right? And you're firing that way. When you have a rifle, you have 4 points of contact. You have your right hand, you've got your left hand, you've got your shoulder area, that's the butt of the gun is bracing up against, and you've got your cheek. All of those things serving to have an opposite effect against the recoil and control the gun when you're shooting multiple shots simultaneously. So, in short, an AR-15 is much easier to shoot than a handgun. A handgun takes a lot more training. If somebody who's never shot a gun before picked up a handgun and picked up an AR-15, they would be much more accurate with the AR-15 than they would be with the handgun. Number 3, gun control is not crime control. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of statistics or anything like that to prove this point. I'm going to approach it strictly from a common sense perspective. If you are attempting to enact gun laws to prevent people who are not supposed to have guns from having guns, the problem with that is, and the reason why it doesn't work, is because criminals by definition do not follow laws. They are okay with breaking laws. That is why they are criminals. Really simple, right? If you enact laws to control gun or restrict gun ownership, the only people you are really restricting are people who are law-abiding citizens, people who don't want to break the laws. Those are not the people you are worried about in the first place. There is no evidence that gun control policy reduces gun crimes. In fact, areas like Los Angeles, DC, Chicago, who have some of the strictest gun laws in the country, have the most gun violent crimes. All right, next up, 10 rounds is not enough. This speaks to capacity limits that are placed by law in certain states, such as California, that limit the number of rounds that can be in any magazine to 10. And quite frankly, 10 rounds is not enough. A lot of people feel that it is, and typically those feelings are fueled by people who do not shoot. So relative to that, I'm going to paint you a scenario. You are in your bed, fast asleep, when all of a sudden you hear the sound of window crashing in the middle of the night. You rush and grab your kids from the other room and your wife. You guys hunker down in the bedroom, you lock the door, and then all of a sudden you remember there's this gun in the nightstand that's been there for years that you haven't touched. Side note, who does that? I've maybe shot this thing like one time, and then it's set in my drawer for a decade, you know. Okay, so you run and grab the gun and you're fumbling with the combination to the safe lock because you don't remember because you haven't opened it in so long, but you figure it out, you get it open, you make sure the safety is off, you chamber your round, you run and try to take cover in an advantageous position. Your adrenaline is flowing like crazy. You have fear for yourself, for your life, for your family's life. And all of a sudden intruders burst through the door. To think that you're going, with all this going on, with no training and no practice, you're going to be able to get targets on round is not likely. Add to the fact that most home invasions occur with 3 to 4 individuals. So now you got 10 rounds to combat 3 to 4 individuals who may also be armed. And on top of all that, because they're criminals and they don't care about the law, they have standard and high capacity magazines while you're limited to a substandard magazine. I'll also add that a lot of times burglary and crime take place from desperate people who are suffering from addictions to drugs. And so the fact remains that even if you could get a target on round, it may take multiple rounds to take somebody who's hyped up on drugs to quell or eliminate that threat. And so 10 rounds is simply not enough. People talk about maximum or high capacity magazines. I think at the very least we should get the standard capacity magazines that are offered by the manufacturer at the time that these firearms are produced. How about you? All right. Next up, handguns are not the best gun for home defense. Now, given what we've already talked about how much easier a rifle is to shoot than a handgun is to shoot, this statement probably makes a lot more sense to you now. One of the things we haven't talked about, though, is the nature of ballistics. For example, in an AR-15, which shoots a 2.23 round or a 5.56 NATO round, these bullets are designed for maximum penetration. And that may be fine if you reside in an isolated area or you're in the country where you sit on lots of land and you don't have any neighbors around. But if you're in an apartment building where there are common walls, if you're in an urban environment where your neighbors are in close proximity, that can be a problem, because as a gun owner, you are responsible, regardless of how good your intentions are, for every bullet that leaves your gun. And so you may not want to have bullets, even if you put them on target, going through whatever the target is, through a wall, out into your neighbor's living room, right? That could be a problem. And so I think that a pistol caliber, like a 9mm, for instance, particularly if it's a hollow point bullet, which is designed to lessen penetration, is probably a far better suited caliber. Now, the problem lies in the fact that, okay, the 9mm is a better caliber, but a handgun is harder to shoot. Well, people have thought about this, and fortunately for all of us, they make rifle platforms pistol calibers. They're called pistol caliber carbines, or PCCs. And I believe that a pistol caliber carbine is the best gun for home defense, because you have the 4 points of contact and you have a pistol caliber. So all things being equal, I think that should be your go-to home defense gun. Let's move on to one of the big misconceptions out there, I think that a lot of liberals have, is that handguns are so easy to buy. They are not. Well, I should preface that. Handguns are easy to buy if you're a criminal, because criminals don't care about the law and they will acquire weapons by any number of means that are illegal. And so again, gun legislation to make it harder to buy weapons isn't going to stop a criminal, because they're not going down to the local gun store and buying their weapons anyway. They couldn't. And you know why they can't? Because everybody has to pass a background check. Everybody does. Everybody does, no matter what state you're in. In some states like California, there's a lot more to buying a gun than just passing the background check. You have to pass a background check. You have to pass a safety exam. You have to wait 10 days for a cooling off period. And so there's a lot more to buying a gun in California than other states. However, in every state, you have to pass a background check. Even at gun shows, there is no such thing as a gun show loophole. The same people that are selling guns, the same vendors that are selling guns at gun shows, are FFL licensed vendors that you could buy from either online or elsewhere. So then the question might be, well, gee, Alan, if that's the case, why do people go to gun shows? I don't know. Why do people go to RV shows? Why do people go to boat shows? Because they want to see a variety of RVs and boats from different and accessories, all under the same roof at the same time, to give them an experience that they won't experience at the local gun store. That's why people go to gun shows. There is no loophole that's going to allow somebody with a criminal record or a criminal background to go into a gun show and buy a weapon when they otherwise would not be able to. Okay, guns are inherently dangerous. That's the next one. Now, this one is tough. I'll take a second to gather my thoughts relative to this, because in theory, intuitively, that sounds right? A gun can be a dangerous thing in the wrong hands, or if proper care and caution isn't taken with them. Yes, absolutely. But I would say that is the case for many, many, many things that we are not trying to legislate. There are more deaths every year from intoxicated drivers than there are from guns. Yet people are not trying to ban cars. They're not trying to ban alcohol. There are more deaths every year from blunt objects, i.e. a baseball bat, a club, a hammer, a fist. More deaths occur every year from those types of things than assault rifles. But you don't see them trying to legislate hammers off the shelf at Home Depot. You don't see them taking bats out of the stores at Dick's Sporting Goods. So why are people overemphasizing guns? Because it's a good talking point to a certain degree, because it makes it look like you're being tough on crime, that you're trying to make a difference. And maybe oftentimes some people are well-intentioned and just woefully ignorant about the cause. It is not the gun. A gun sitting on a table at rest, not touched, is not going to go off it. The danger is not in the gun. The danger is in the person operating the gun. Next, guns are not just for self-defense. I know a lot of my friends think, oh, I got a gun, and I keep it in the nightstand, and that's all I need. First off, can we just stop for a second and take a minute? What is wrong with these people who go out and buy a gun and shoot it one time or something, stick it in a drawer for years? What is up with that? I've maybe shot this thing like one time and then it's set in my drawer for a decade. Anyway, so guns are not just for self-defense. Guns have a variety of purposes. So yes, guns can be used for self-defense, absolutely. Obviously, many people hunt, and so they use guns to hunt. Other people participate in shooting competitions, and are members of shooting clubs. There's a whole social aspect to gun ownership that I think people who are not active in the gun world don't get. And so there are many, many uses for guns other than just self-defense. All right. Next, silencers are not silent. So this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Silencers are not silent. An average handgun, when it goes off, is about 160 decibels. That is louder than a plane taking off, which is about 150. The ear starts to feel pain at 130 decibels. If you fired a weapon with your ears unprotected, you are likely to damage your long-term and short-term hearing. If John Wick really shot all those guns as many times as he does in one movie, by the second remake, he would be completely deaf. Okay? So silencers are not silencers, they are suppressors. What they do is suppress the sound. They make the gun not so loud, not silent. Maybe instead of, most suppressors will reduce sound by 20 to 30 decibels. So if it goes from 160 to 120 or 130, it is still loud. It is still louder than a jackhammer. It is still louder than a chainsaw. And so I don't think anybody would say, oh, I didn't hear that jackhammer next to me. No. If somebody shoots with a silencer, you are going to hear it. Everybody in any reasonable proximity is going to hear it. And so I think we get caught up with Jason Bourne and spy movies where the guy has a silencer and kills the bad guy and nobody around him hears anything. You know, that is the Hollywoodification of gun culture. But it is simply not true. Silencers are not silent. They are loud, and they are merely a safety device to protect primarily the shooter's hearing. Last but not least, one gun is probably not enough. Think of guns very much like you think of shoes. If you are the type of white collar person and you wear a suit and tie or shirt and tie every day, then you probably wear dress shoes, right? But when you go to do an athletic activity, you don't wear your dress shoes. You have another pair of shoes, sneakers, to work out in, right? Okay. And then if you're doing some heavy work and out in the yard, you probably got some work boots or something, right? Okay. And then maybe sometimes you have more than one pair of dress shoes or more than one pair of sneakers. Guns are the same way. If you want to have an everyday carry for concealed purposes, you need a gun that's kind of smaller, that's more lightweight, probably has less capacity. That's a lot different than a home defense weapon, which, as I described, ideally would be a pistol caliber carbine, right? If you're out shooting or hunting, that's a different gun. If you're shooting competition, targets, that's a different gun. So there are a lot of different reasons to have more than one gun, and if you are serious about your personal protection and home defense, there is probably good reason to have more than one. And people who have more than one, many people collect guns. They're not crazy, they're not radicals, they're not off the deep end. They just enjoy gun for sport and recreation in all likelihood and collection, and they're law-abiding citizens just like you and me. All right? So those are the 10 things that all liberals need to know about guns. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you disagree, let me know. If you agree, let me know. If there are other things you feel like I should tell my liberal friends, then let me know that too. All right? Take care. Be good to one another. Peace.